This is video 3 for Lab 2, Understanding TCP and UDP. And in the previous two videos we've configured a couple of devices here in our workspace, and we've configured them to take advantage of the profile we've created in our customized application. And now what we need to do is two things. We need to choose what statistics we want to gather, then we need to duplicate the scenario and configure the second scenario to run on UDP instead of TCP. That way when we run them both we can compare the results. So let's choose some statistics first. Up here under simulation you'll see an option for choose individual statistics. Go ahead and click that. Expand global and expand custom application, because that's what we're running. Go ahead and put a check mark next to task response time in seconds right here. Then expand node, expand IP. There's a lot of options in here and we could look at any of them really, but let's go ahead and use traffic received in packets per second. Click OK. And now we've chosen the stats that we want. So let's duplicate the scenario. The scenario right now is configured to run under TCP. We can see that by editing the attributes of the app configuration. If you pull down application definitions, you'll recall that the app configuration lets us choose what types of apps we want to run in our scenarios. And you'll see that all of the other types of traffic are turned off, but we do have a custom application. We can edit it, and you can see that our custom application is using TCP for the transport protocol. We're going to duplicate the scenario and then switch this to UDP in the second scenario. So up underneath scenarios, duplicate scenario, and just go ahead and name it UDP. Click OK. Now we have a second scenario, TCP and a UDP. So now in our UDP scenario, let's go back into the app configuration and edit it. Pull down application definitions, row 0, description. Edit the custom application. Let's switch the transport protocol from TCP to UDP. Click OK. Click OK. And now we're ready to go. We've got our statistics chosen, we've got a UDP and a TCP scenario. Now it's time to run the simulation and see what results we get. So go ahead and click Scenarios. Choose to manage the scenarios. See a little window pop up here. Underneath the results you'll see that we have uncollected results for our two scenarios. Drop down the little option and click Collect for each of them. Now we're set to collect results on both of our scenarios. Go ahead and make sure that the simulation duration is set to 1 hour. It should be that by default, but just in case. When we click OK, both scenarios will run, and it should go pretty quickly. Okay, both of them are done. Go ahead and click Close on this window. Go up to Results and Compare Results. First, let's drop down the Custom Application tab and click Task Response Time in seconds. Keep Overlaid Statistics selected, but instead of As Is, change that to Average. Makes it a little easier to look at. Then go ahead and click Show. So taking a look at the graph here, you can see that when an application is running on TCP, the response time is higher, which would mean that UDP is completing the task more quickly. Now remember that our task was to send a single request and to receive a single response back from the server. To do this, TCP has to create and tear down a connection every time it transfers the packets. So this creates overhead in the form of response delay, which is what we're seeing in this graph. UDP does not have to set up or tear down any connection, so it's able to respond more quickly. Let's take a look at a different panel now. Go ahead and delete this one. Let's take a look at the object statistics here. Go to the destination server, drop down IP, and put a little check to traffic received, and show that graph. So we're looking at our traffic received at the server in packets per second. You can see that the average traffic received by the source workstation was higher when using TCP. Oh, excuse me, the server. We're looking at the server here. The traffic received by the server was higher when we used TCP. This is also because of the extra overhead that TCP creates when it establishes and tears down connections. To do the three-way handshake, as well as the handshake that's needed to delete the connection, additional packets have to be sent. So we can see here that UDP is much more lightweight in that it doesn't have to send out all those additional packets, which means that it's faster, but it's not more reliable because it doesn't have any of the buffers or any of the technologies in place that TCP does to ensure reliable delivery. So now that we've taken a look at both of these graphs, we can see that there's definitely more overhead associated with TCP, but that doesn't mean that we would want to use UDP for everything. Just like because TCP is reliable, it doesn't mean we want to use TCP for everything. TCP is perfect for situations where you have to have reliable data delivery, like checking your email or obtaining a web page or database traffic. UDP is used mostly in situations that need either a constant flow of bits that don't get interrupted, like a streaming video or streaming audio, or for situations that call for small packets of information to be sent very quickly. For example, DNS name resolution uses UDP packets as opposed to TCP. There are other protocols that use UDP instead for quick delivery, like the SNMP protocol and things like that. So I hope that this lab was helpful for you to understand a little bit about the difference between TCP and UDP, and yeah, I think that's about it.